Whether you're planning your first dream trip to Europe or you've been there many times, if you're considering renting a car on your trip, here are a few more things you should know about driving in Europe. I highly recommend getting a car with the GPS. Even though you may have your cell phone with you, cellular signals can be spotty at times, and having that in-car GPS makes everything so much less stressful. Oftentimes, you can rent a nicer car that has a GPS included as part of the car for cheaper than what the rental car company will charge you for the daily fee for an external GPS. Automatic transmission versus manual transmission. Manual transmissions are much more common in Europe than they are in America, and you can often save some money on your rental car by renting a lower cost manual transmission car. However, I'd recommend that unless you drive a manual transmission regularly now, just spend the extra money and get an automatic. It's already a little bit more difficult to drive in a foreign country with signs in different languages and different rules of the road. Why insert just another thing to make it more difficult? Insurance on your rental car. You should make sure you have some. Most companies include some sort of liability insurance for any damage that you might cause to someone else's car or property, but you need to have a plan for the insurance on the car you are renting. Many credit card companies offer some sort of insurance for rental cars, but you need to read the coverage rules. Some cards only provide insurance in the US, and others only function as a secondary insurance after what your personal car insurance might cover. Some only cover the deductible on your personal insurance, and your personal insurance may not cover you in Europe. In order to avoid any problems, I highly recommend using a card that offers primary insurance. Most premium cards offer this type of protection, but those cards also tend to have higher annual fees. I highly recommend the American Express Premium Car Rental Insurance. You can enroll most American Express products into this program. It charges a flat fee of around $25 or less for an entire rental period up to 42 days. It is your primary insurance, and it will cover up to $100,000 of damage on a car. I think this is the best option for most travelers. It's way less expensive than what the rental car company will charge you. I've seen daily charges for rental car company insurance in the $20 to $30 per day range. That could be a 50% increase in your rental car cost. Now, like always, make sure you read the fine print, as this insurance doesn't cover cars rented in some countries. And that is true of most credit card rental insurance. Also, make sure the name of the primary driver of the rental car is also the name of the person on the credit card, as this can matter if you need to make a claim. Just make sure you understand all of the rules of your credit card protection so that you don't have a problem if something happens. There are also third-party options out there for rental car insurance, and some trip insurance policies offer it as an additional benefit. Make sure you document all of the damage on your rental car prior to taking possession. I know you're excited and tired and just want to get on your way, but take the 5 minutes and do it. Otherwise, you could be charged for that damage upon return. This isn't unique to Europe. It happens in the US too, but it's even harder to fight with the companies outside of the US. This is also the reason why having insurance on your car is a must for your rental. Rental car company deposit on a card. When you rent a car, they will often put a deposit on your card beyond the rental fee. I've had a deposit as high as $750, but it's usually more in the $500 range. Just be sure that you have a high enough limit on that card that you're using so that it isn't a problem for you when you go to rent this car. Diesel-fueled cars. Many rental cars will use diesel fuel. It is not uncommon for these cars to require the addition of diesel exhaust fluid. While they're supposed to make sure this is full prior to your rental period, and it shouldn't be a problem, I have had to add this fluid on more than one occasion on a long-term rental in Europe. Just understand if your car requires it and how it works. It's available at many gas stations, and it's not expensive. Crossing borders. Most of the European countries do not have any border control when driving from one country to another. If you're in the Schengen zone, you might not even notice you're entering or exiting a different country. It's very similar to driving in the United States and traveling from one state to the next. However, there are some European countries that do have border control, Switzerland for example, and some countries may stop random cars for inspection even if a visa isn't required to enter that country. Just do the research ahead of time so that you know what you need to do in order to travel to the places you want to go. International driver's permit. I know I talked about this in part 1 of the series, but I wanted to come back to it. There are countries in Europe that require an international driver's permit. While I have never had to show mine to anyone, I know people who have recently been stopped in Italy and have been asked to see their permit. Double check the rules for where you're going. If in doubt, just get one. Why risk it? They're not that expensive. Parking discs. In many towns in Europe, they use a system known as disc parking for time-restricted free parking. In your rental car, you'll find a blue placard with a wheel on it that allows you to dial in the time you parked. You pull into the spot and set the time on the placard. You should round it up to the next half hour. This allows the people writing tickets to know how long you've been there. These parking areas are marked with signs like these. Construction stoplights. You will occasionally drive up to a mobile stoplight while driving. These take the place of a person standing holding a sign when a road is down to one lane to support construction or other road work. Treat it the same way. Stay stopped while oncoming traffic has the right of way and move forward when it turns green. Traffic priorities. Sometimes a 2-lane road will narrow down to 1 lane. When this happens, one of these signs will be present to tell you which lane has priority in the single lane. For the sign on the right, you have priority, and the sign on the left indicates that you must yield to any cars in the oncoming lane and must verify the lane is free of traffic before you proceed. Drinking and driving rules. While it is very common to drink wine or beer with your meal in most of Europe, they take driving while under the influence very seriously. In pretty much every European country, the allowable blood alcohol content is lower than the allowable in the United States, and in some countries, no detectable alcohol is allowed if you are driving. And the penalties can be very severe, including fines and jail time, so just don't risk it. Safety regulations. You need to understand the safety rules in the country you'll be driving in. Some countries require a vehicle to have high visibility vests available for the passengers or to have a reflective hazard triangle in the car. The rental company will ensure you have the required items for the country that you are renting in, but you need to make sure that you also understand the requirements for any other countries you may be traveling into. You may need to stop and buy additional safety items just to be sure. Just make sure you do the research before you go. Cell phone use while driving. Don't. Just don't. In some countries, it's not even legal to use hands-free cellular phones while driving. Just plan ahead, enjoy the sights. Again, know the rules before you go to avoid any unnecessary fines. Low emission zones or car restricted areas. There are areas that are low emission zones that restrict traffic. This is especially true for large cities. Make sure you research this ahead of time. Some only allow cars on certain days of the week, or certain numbered license plates on certain days of the week. This can make planning ahead of time more difficult, of course, so you have to know the rules on this one before you go, or you may have a very frustrating day. Be careful of where your GPS tells you to go. There are a lot of small paved roads in the countryside that will show up on your GPS, and sometimes you just need to pull over and look at the map before you drive through someone's field. Though sometimes you will end up driving through someone's field. I had a GPS once want me to turn on a dirt road and drive through a rock quarry, and in northern Germany we've experienced paved roads that are not open to car traffic, but your GPS may not know that. So if you're driving through the countryside, you may need to pull over on occasion to analyze the maps to ensure you're going on the right roads, or that the roads you're turning onto allow vehicles to travel on them. Motorcycles are allowed to split traffic. This means that they will drive in between the lanes of stopped or slow-moving cars. You need to be extra careful when you change lanes in a traffic jam, or you might run into one. Check your mirrors before switching lanes and be aware that this is just a common practice that you have to watch out for. On the main roads, there can be large distances between exits. Don't let your fuel go below a quarter tank. Plan for bathroom breaks. Plan for food stops. And don't be surprised that when you stop that there's a pay toilet at the place you stop. They're common in Northern Europe and the United Kingdom. I have never seen one in France, but when you stop, make sure you have some coins available because you may need them. And in the end, you just have to understand that the way people drive will be different from country to country. Many countries, drivers follow the rules and are very predictable. In some countries, the exact opposite is true. Just be careful, keep an eye out, and pay attention. You'll get a feel for it fairly quickly. So hopefully this information will make you feel a little bit more confident about renting a car on your European vacation. As I've stated before, if you can drive in the United States, you can drive in Europe. You just have to do a little research ahead of time, understand what the rules are, and just pay attention and have fun. If you missed part 1 of this series of things you should know about driving in Europe, please follow this link, and if you want to see more videos of our other travels, please subscribe to the channel.